Would the inverted spear of heaven work on Mahoraga? Let's talk about it. Now, for anybody that needs a reminder, the inverted spear of heaven has the ability to nullify curse techniques. This is why Toji used it in his battle against Gojo to bypass the limitless. And then, of course, we've got Mahoraga's ability to adapt to any and all phenomena. So, what happens when these things come together? Well, just like with a lot of things in Jujutsu Kaisen, this is never spelled out for us, so it's left up to our interpretation, which leaves us with a tale as old as time, right? What happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? So I can't provide you a cold hard answer to this, but we can kind of examine what we know. So let's start with what we understand about the inverted spear of heaven. And I'm going to be brief here, but if you are interested in this thing, I've got a video fully explaining it and also one where I cover curse tools in general, so check those out if you want. But our best guess to how these types of curse tools work is that they are literally imbued with curse techniques that they are then utilizing, right? So the inverted spear of heaven has a curse technique that nullifies other curse techniques. And we see this in action against Gojo, right? It penetrates through the infinity. But an important distinction here is that it doesn't just like completely negate the curse technique forever, right? In Gojo's case, it goes through the infinity and stabs him like a normal dagger. It doesn't prevent Gojo from using infinity elsewhere, like after that happened. It's just in like the point it comes into contact with, right? Okay, so let's just assume the inverted spear of heaven works fully against Mahoraga, but I'm going to challenge that notion in a second. But first, let's assume it works, and let's assume when Mahoraga gets stabbed with it, he can't adapt to it, so we'll say he can't heal from that damage, right? Well, as soon as you pull that dagger out, the nullification aspect is gone, so he's going to be able to then adapt to the damage because whatever wound it left is just like a normal martial wound, right? So I think the only way you could even conceivably think that this thing would beat Mahoraga is if you like stab it in to wherever is a lethal spot on his body, which brings in whole other questions like will a headshot, is that lethal to Mahoraga? A heart shot, does his anatomy work the same way like a human's would? But let's just assume a headshot would kill him, right? I think the only way this inverted spear works is if you dig it deep in and you leave it there forever because, you know, if you pull it out, nothing's interfering with his ability anymore, right? But that's a best case scenario in my opinion, because now let's talk about would the inverted spear even interfere with what Mahoraga can do? Because again, it nullifies curse techniques. And I'm not so sure that Mahoraga's adaptation would be considered a curse technique. It might just be like what Mahoraga does. You know, there hasn't really been any distinction on if what the different Shikigami can do are literally curse techniques in the same way sorcerers utilize them, right? Like it might be more akin to something like Gojo's Six Eyes. It's just like an inherent trait that Mahoraga is capable of. And if that's the case, would the inverted spear of heaven do anything? It might just literally be a dagger as far as Mahoraga is concerned. Now, I actually lied on what the best case scenario for the inverted spear of heaven would be because there is one more possible interpretation you could make here. You could say that the inverted spear of heaven would just cancel the 10 shadows out completely and basically poof Mahoraga out of existence because it's nullifying the technique that created him, right? Although my personal interpretation would be that it wouldn't work that way. And again, there's no like canonical evidence for me to point to. So this is just my own instinct, right? But I feel like the 10 shadows like utilization was when Mahoraga was created during the ritual, the actual crafting of him from the shadows. And then beyond that point, like he's just Mahoraga. He was summoned via the 10 shadows, but he is not like literally the 10 shadows. I know that's kind of semantics, but you know, that's my interpretation. So I don't think the dagger would just poof him out of existence, but it's at least possible. Ultimately, I'm of the opinion that in a vacuum, Mahoraga trumps the inverted spear of heaven. Now, that's not to say that it couldn't be a useful asset in a fight against him, especially combined with other things. I just don't think in and of itself, it's an instant win button, right? But I would love to hear y'all's thoughts in the comments on this because it is open to interpretation. So let me know what you think. And finally, I want to give a special shout out to Roko for sponsoring this video. Great question, man.